you will be able to deposit your FLR to earn actually the underlying fees. So as people mint, your Flare is earning XRP. How many other assets earn you blue chip cryptos? Not many, but that's the ultimate goal with Flare. Like a lot of people say, like, well, I got Flare. Oh, I earn more Flare with Flare drops. Oh, I earn more Flare with FTSO. Oh, I earn more Flare with staking. Yes, to accumulate it, to ultimately then use it for this purpose, to earn the underlying assets. That's the ultimate yield stream, is to earn other blue chips, stable coins, Bitcoin, XRP with your Flare and still keep accumulating them. So you could set yourself up with this yield streams coming in from different sources, and there'll be different strategies.
FAssets are backed by 3 asset types: the underlying, Flare native token collateral, and either stablecoin or wrapped ether collateral. The process of minting and redeeming FAssets is supported by independent agents. Their role in the system is secured through over-collateralization, removing the need to trust any counterparty. To mint FAssets, the minter must first select an agent and pay them a small fee to reserve the required collateral. The minter then sends the agent the underlying asset, with the stake connector used to prove the transactions taken place on the other chain. With the payment verified, the FAssets are then minted as ERC20 tokens on Flare. These tokens can be used within DeFi on Flare or bridged to another chain. FAssets unlocks the value of non-smart contract tokens. Unlike many wrapped asset systems, FAssets are trustless, meaning there's no centralized entity involved in the process. Holders of FAssets on Flare will also earn FLR from the cross-chain incentive pool for bringing value onto the Flare network. Today, the total value of all public blockchain assets is approximately $1 trillion. However, more than 70% of this value is made up of tokens from blockchains that can't support smart contracts, a critical requirement for decentralized applications. The FAsset system, developed by Flare Labs, allows these assets such as Bitcoin, XRP, and Dogecoin to be used trustlessly in smart contracts on Flare. Minting these tokens as FAssets enables them to earn rewards in DeFi and other types of decentralized applications. Once the FAssets are minted on Flare, they can also be bridged to other networks using Layer Cake. For developers, this means secure, trustless access to a vast amount of currently untapped value and new potential users. To securely represent these assets on a smart contract chain without requiring a centralized third party, the FAsset system relies upon Flare's native data acquisition protocols. Firstly, the Flare Time Series Oracle for decentralized price feeds, and secondly, the Stake Connector for trustless verification of transactions on the underlying chain.
Welcome to the DeFi Standard, and this is Mickey B. Fresh. Exciting news out of Flare Labs. Beta testing of FAssets has commenced on Flare's Costin testnet. So Costin is the testnet for Songbird. Flare Labs has commenced a private beta of FAssets on the Costin test network. Initial tests will cover all major components and key user scenarios. So before we jump into this, and I'm going to go a little deeper than just reading through the basics of what's announced. I think everyone can read that. What I do want to talk about is some of the key enhancements and differences in the V2 model, which we'll call, and just point those out. And also a refresher on what makes the FAsset system so powerful and how it's a part of the synergies that go with the FTSO and the state connector, and also layer cake, and ultimately the Flare network itself. So the FAsset system allows non-contract tokens such as BTC, XRP, Doge, and I believe Litecoin will also be available to be used trustlessly with smart contracts on Flare. By minting these non-smart contract tokens into FAssets, it will be possible to put them to work, earning yield or rewards in decentralized applications on the Flare network. And for over 2.5 years now, that's what the focus of this channel has been positioning yourself to be able to earn yield and take advantage of this new asset class beyond just speculation. And natively earning yield is one of the safest and lowest risk ways. The FAsset system is built in to the core Flare network. So it is a decentralized application, but it's built into the network because it utilizes the core protocols of the FTSO, which it provides trustless, guaranteed, accurate pricing at the software layer, as well as the state connector, which can verify the actions on other blockchains so that underlying collateral that is minted, it can read at any moment and keep track of that agent's account. And this is what allows this system to be built on Flare to other networks and nowhere else in a way that's low risk, secure, and reliable. And it also will give these assets like Bitcoin, XRP, Doge, Litecoin, a good amount of that value brought to Flare. And that's what's going to kickstart the ecosystem on Flare. And before we jump into this more, I do want to point out there's been a lot of discussions and people questioning or trying to make sense of, well, why hasn't an ecosystem been built out on Flare? What's going on there? You must remember, and I've said this time and time again, they have been building this for 5 years. This is a culmination to build something for the future that's going to be sustainable and robust and be a foundation to build next generation applications that could use data in ways that other networks can't. And an ecosystem will not form without bringing value onto it. And just having the native Flare token or native SGB and some issued assets isn't going to develop an ecosystem. So nothing was ever going to happen until we saw stablecoins, FAssets bridged, and other assets brought to the network so we could have a thriving ecosystem of dApps that is going to begin. We are still in beta phase. Remember, before the network launched, you were told 6 to 9 months Flare network will be in beta. We are in a distribution period for the Flare token, which lasts for 36 months. The inflation rate is not the distribution period. That ends. It's a hard cutoff. And that goes down every year, and it never could be raised. And it'll be up to governance at what rate will lower that. So once FAssets are on Flare, they can also be bridged to other networks using Flare Labs' trustless bridge for smart contract networks, Layer Cake, or any other third-party bridge built on Flare for this purpose. So as these assets are brought to Flare, so let's take FXRP for example, this is a use case that drives demand for XRP. So regardless if you're a Flare holder or not, this still applies to you. Even if you don't mint FAssets, it still impacts you because it drives demand for XRP. Just like Futureverse has, I think, 500,000 XRP locked up. That's demand for XRP, and it drives TVL. XRP has had 0 TVL, and a reason why its price hasn't risen because of lack of demand and a lack of utility and use of the asset. Can't just count on only institutions and Ripple to do everything. This is the community's chance now to put their assets to work. This is one option, and it's going to be a trustless way to bring the value of your XRP over to a network that has EVM smart contracts built on a super fast blockchain with literally 1 second block times, with probably, in my opinion, the best consensus in all of crypto, which is Avalanche's Snowman++, to be used in all these DeFi dApps. And on top of that, it will earn you FLR, which therefore can be delegated or staked to earn more FLR. And that FLR can be also used as collateral in the collateral system. So these are things that are not in the little blog here that I'm just going a little deeper in, which I think many of you know who watch these videos. I'm going to go a little further than the average video on some of this stuff. So if it goes over some of your heads, just take it in. You'll get there. It's a lot to absorb. And let's do a little refresher now. So Flare Labs is the private entity who is Hugo's the co-founder, the CTO, and the chief scientist. They are all machine learning experts. Ultimately, Flare is built to be a data provisioning platform. And they now have a private company, Flare Labs. Flare Networks, the network, is a decentralized network. It has nothing to do with Flare Labs. Those are separate.
And talk to me about the near future. What are the plans that you have going on at Flare that really excite you?
So we are working pretty heavily on what the nexus between machine learning and blockchain. That's probably where I find my most exciting sort of elements. And then we think that the future is about allowing people to build dApps that have access to as much data as possible so that they're useful. So we think that obviously we're starting in DeFi. We think there's a lot of possibilities in gaming, a lot of possibilities in tokenization, and a lot of possibilities in machine learning, specifically around data.
Perfect.
So initially, Flare Labs will run an initial phase of testing before opening the system up for wider community experimentation. During this first phase, Flare Labs and initial partners will adopt all required roles within the system and provide the necessary infrastructure. As the testnet beta progresses, external participants will be able to join. This is a system that has never even been attempted before. We're talking cross-chain collateral system. Never been done before. So that's why this has taken time to perfect, and they've enhanced the design and the ability for more participation and for lower risk. But it's a phased approach. With something like this, it has to start slow and then gradually grow, because you don't want to risk something that's at the heart of the network. Like this collateral system is at the core of the network. We have the data provisioning protocols, and those operate the data to facilitate this type of cross-chain application. And that's the whole point. That other networks can't do that. So the test will cover the fundamental operations of the system. So the minting, the redeeming, the liquidation, and the challenging. Test assets will allow the simulation of market volatility to assess the system's robustness under stress. Hugo says more than 70% of the total value locked of blockchain assets do not have smart contracts and therefore can't be efficiently deployed in DeFi. And currently, DeFi is the prime use case for crypto assets. Get that through your head, XRP community. It won't always be the prime use case, and in the end, it might not even be the top use case. But at the moment, it is the financial system for crypto. We can't have a mass adoption without a financial system. That's what DeFi is. And FAssets are formally a delta neutral synthetic with multi-collateral backing. They enable these legacy assets to be represented on a smart contract chain without requiring a centralized third party. For developers, it will be a new and trustless means to access new potential users and a large amount of currently untapped value. And all these dApps will be built around this core collateral system, which is at the heart of the network. And it'll allow for derivatives. You'll see lending and borrowing. You'll see all types of liquidity pools and new kind of DeFi primitives that you couldn't even imagine. And all these things will come together. The ability for the FLR, which earns the flare drops, which earns the FTSO or staking rewards, will then also be able to be used as collateral too. And that's the beauty, is that you have this asset that's multi-yield bearing as one of the collaterals. And there's going to be now 3 forms of collateral, which we're going to get to now. So testing will be conducted on Costin, and then we'll see the implementation on Songbird, which is the canary network to Flare, before it's fully integrated on the Flare mainnet. And now this is something that's not going to be rushed. So be patient. This is a complex system, a very powerful system, and it needs to be done right. Ultimately, it'll be a truly decentralized, trustless system governed by the FLR token holders. Built into the network, there is no regulatory concerns because it's decentralized and built into the network layer. Same way the liquidity pools on the XRP ledger are built into the network layer. There's no regulatory risks, 0. Because of that. And once FAssets are live on Flare mainnet, in addition to earning DeFi yields, users and dApps will be able to earn FLR tokens from the cross-chain incentive pool as a reward for bringing sustainable value to Flare. So some might say, oh wow, that's more supply hitting the market from this rewards incentive pool. But the action of bringing that value over to Flare network drives more adoption and more use. So now everyone who mints an FAsset, who never even owned Flare, gets Flare, and now they realize, wait, I'm going to get Flare drops with this. I'm going to be able to delegate or stake with this, and I could put it as collateral in a collateral pool with an agent. I'm going to hold on to this. So that's going to be an incentive to hold the asset as we get new users, and then they become part of the network. So it's not just the Flare token holders. We could see participants who own no Flare right now, and they want to maybe just have XRP, and they want to mint that. And they're thinking about it. They don't know. Well, we'll see how it goes. And once they see the system up and running and it's working, they'll be willing to mint. Also, if XRP's price on the market goes higher, that's more value that people are more likely to mint, because their portfolios, if they say, I'm going to take 10% and mint it to FXRP and put it on Flare, well, if the market goes up, like we did in the last run, then that's more value that could be brought over. So we want to see TVL. TVL stands for total value locked. That is the metric and measurement we want to look for. We need to move past the TA charts. Those are for pricing of assets, but there's more than that. These are not stocks. These are a new asset class with platform and network economies. This is an economic model with mechanism design built into it. Okay, those are big words. Probably haven't heard many people talk about those words, but they're very real and very important words. So, how will this process begin? So, code will be deployed on Costin. There'll be a private beta, phase 1, and an onboarding part A, which is in progress, and Flare Labs is the only initial entity involved. Then we'll see a phase 2 beta, which will include selected third parties are invited to join the private beta, including existing FTSO data providers and Flare dApp builders to provide additional feedback. Then we're going to see a private beta phase 3. During this phase, the mechanics of the FAsset system will be tested in a non-competitive and non-volatile setting using predefined test scenarios. So we need to understand that it's not just testing the code here. There's live behaviors that need to be tested. There's, volatility of pricing, and there's a lot of things that go into the mix here. And they also probably have run many simulations, but simulations are just that, simulations. So first step, cost and test network. So this is going to take some time. I don't know how long that will take. Then there's a private beta phase 4, which is competitive tests. In this phase, it is everyone looking out for themselves with no preset scenarios and increased volatility. The aim is for all participants to try to game or break the system. A leaderboard will be created and bounties awarded based on performance. Remember, this is on the test net, so it's not with real money. But I like this idea of the competitiveness, and this stress tests the system. And then we have private beta phase 5, feedback and updates. Following the competitive tests, any required updates will be made and validated. Completion of the private beta once the Flare Labs team is satisfied with the robustness of the FAsset system within the private testnet beta, a graphical user interface will be launched, enabling the commencement of an open beta program. I like that. So a graphical user interface will be launched. So think of like a console that will allow you to see visual of all the different agents, the different collaterals. Like there's going to be multiple different metrics going on here. This is a little more complex than I'm staking, and give me my 4% and that's it. It's a little more complex. It's a DeFi dApp. That just happens to be built into the network layer. And it's being built by Flare Labs. They are the builders, but they will not control the ultimate dApp once it is released in its final iteration. But I like this graphical user interface because one thing we all know, the user experience and the UIs in crypto have not been the best. And you can't do everything in your wallet. Like people say, okay, I want to mint FAssets through my Bifrost wallet. You might be able to do that, but you're likely going to want to use a console and an interface that gives you the whole depth of all the metrics and the capabilities and the data in a purpose-built screen. Now, that doesn't mean that Bifrost won't offer the capabilities to mint or do something, an activity that has to do with your FAssets, but the fact that this is being built by the Flare Labs team I like it. I like it a lot. And that's necessary. Their console for governance and The token portal is awesome. I love it. I use that over the Bifrost wallet itself. And you could use either, but that gives you the full capabilities and to see, every aspect. It's preference. Moving on. So learnings from this open beta will lead to the finalization of the launch candidate for Songbird. The aim is for the private testnet to be completed in beta by Q1 next year. So in Q1, the private beta will be expected to be completed. So what does that mean? We're almost through Q4. So sometime in February, March, the private beta will end. And there's how many phases here? 5 phases of private beta. And then once that ends, we'll move on to the launch on Songbird. So roles and responsibilities. So there are 4 main roles. And here's where things have changed. And we're going to get a little more in depth here with this. So we have the minter and the redeemer. We have the agent. We have the liquidator. And we have the challenger. Challenger and liquidator are probably new terms that you're not familiar with from the original white paper. And that's why I said, even going back to the past videos I made on the FAssets, expect things to change. Just expect them to. And don't expect them to be, written in stone from that white paper that was written literally 3 years ago. That was written. So it's only natural that things have been enhanced. Technology's enhanced. Innovations have come along. And we have the minter and redeemer, which would be the person minting the FAssets. And they would initiate the minting of FAssets by providing the underlying token to an FAssets agent and ultimately receiving freshly minted FAssets in their Flare wallet. The same person can also be a redeemer if they choose to return their FAssets and claim the underlying tokens they represent. I'm just going to say it now before we even get to it. You do not trust the agent. There is zero trust in that agent who provided you the collateral. Hence the trustless nature of the system. It's designed so it's trustless. And why would be a reason why you won't be the redeemer? Maybe you sell your FAsset on the Flare network for something other asset. Then somebody else is going to redeem it. Or maybe it'll never get redeemed and it'll end up on some other network and locked on the Flare network and bridged over with layer cake over to XRP. If it's BTC, maybe FBTC. Or it's bridged over to Ethereum. Or to some other network, to Solana. So the more we have locked up and stayed locked up, but also get the utility. The hardest thing to do in these economic models of crypto, speculation aside, and anyone who's been watching my videos knows, speculation is always going to be there, but I don't talk about it because it's useless. The ultimate driver is going to be utility demand and storage demand. So how do you get both of those to happen simultaneously? And it's a very difficult thing to do because, well, staking, you lock it up. Okay, but now it's there. It's providing utility as security. That's great. But if that's the only thing, that's not going to cut it. And with Flare, you have multiple things the asset does. You have governance. You have FTSO delegations. And then you'll also be able to use it as collateral. And I'm not going to speculate on the liquid staking derivative yet. We'll get to that in the next video. But if you look at page 1 of the white paper, it says staked Flare or liquid staked Flare as the ability to use as collateral. So expect in the future, if you choose to stake your Flare, you'll also be able to use it as collateral. Because if anyone's not paying attention to the rest of crypto right now, that is the hottest thing in all of crypto is liquid staking derivatives have exploded during this bear market. Exploded. Billions. So, agents facilitate the minting and redemption of FAssets. To render the system trustless, the amount of FAssets mintable by an agent is dependent on the collateral they have locked up. So here's where things change a little bit. They provide 3 types of backing for the FAssets they mint. So 3. So we're going from the initial was, for the most part, 1 was 250% over collateralized of FLR. That was the initial one. And people were skeptical on that. How is that going to maintain? And to an extent, as a young asset, that was very ambitious. But now they've refined the system. So what are these 3 assets that are going to be backing the FAsset that's minted? So initially you'll have the underlying asset, which could be Bitcoin, XRP, and those live on their native blockchains. You can't take XRP off the XRP ledger. You can't take Bitcoin off the Bitcoin blockchain. That's where they live. They're part of the protocol, hence the values in the protocol. But you could represent them on other chains. But you can't lock them on the Bitcoin blockchain or on the XRP ledger in a way that you can on smart contract chains. And that's why the FAsset system is special. And the next asset that's going to be backing them is highly liquid stablecoins or ETH collateral. So think USDC, USDT. Those are your stablecoins that dominate the market right now and make the system safer by using stablecoins, since there's less volatility with stablecoins. Obviously, they come with some risks. Now, they throw ETH in there. Don't get big flustered just because they put ETH in there. ETH is the number 2 asset. And we want to encourage the ETH community and ETH ecosystem to come over. So this will help bring some ETH over there onto Flare. And then finally, we have the Flare native token, FLR, as collateral, which will still have a significant chunk. So if anyone's concerned, like, oh, Flare FLR is not going to be used as much as collateral as it was initially, oh, that's a bad thing. No. We want to have safe and secure first so we could build up more minted assets, therefore more Flare is locked up. But there's something that's changed in this setup that wasn't in the old one. So yes, there might be additional collateral that will cut into the amount of Flare that would be locked up. But now everybody is going to have the ability to use their FLR as collateral with an agent. And you weren't able to do that in V1 due to the way the design was with the custody issue and the way it was initially set up. In this new design, the way they have it, from what I've read on GitHub, you will be able to deposit your FLR to earn actually the underlying fees. Now, I don't want to get too far into that because that gets a little complicated, and that's probably for the next video, but you will be able to do that to earn the underlying assets. So as people mint, your Flare is earning XRP. How many other assets earn you blue chip cryptos? Not many, but that's the ultimate goal with Flare. Like, a lot of people say, like, well, I got Flare. Oh, I earn more Flare with Flare drops. Oh, I earn more Flare with FTSO. Oh, I earn more Flare with staking. Yes, to accumulate it, to ultimately then use it for this purpose, to earn other assets. And that's the ultimate yield stream, is to earn other blue chips, stable coins, Bitcoin, XRP with your Flare and still keep accumulating them. So you could set yourself up with this perpetual yield streams coming in from different sources, and there'll be different strategies. Moving on, the liquidator. If the value of the collateral held by an agent becomes too low to support their minted F assets, they're automatically put into liquidation mode. Liquidators spring into action, redeeming F assets with the agent in order to bring the agent's collateral ratio back into balance. So you might be asking, well, why would a liquidator do that out of the goodness in their heart? It's the same concept as arbitrage. They do it not for charity, but for profit. So there's a profit-motivated reason for them to be right there waiting for, as soon as it drops below that liquidation level, they're ready to liquidate because they want to earn the profits. And it's an easy way to profit. And as we see with other big DeFi dApps like Aave and Compound, there's plenty of liquidators ready to pounce on it immediately. So that's no concern there. Now we have this new role as the challenger. So the challenger, agents are required to hold the underlying assets. If they make a transaction using these funds, which is not permitted, a challenger can use the state connector to detect the unpermitted transaction and provide proof to the protocol of this action. With proof, the agent will be disabled from minting and their backed F assets will be put into liquidation. So this is interesting. And a lot of people, going back in the last year or two asked, well, what about the agents will do with the underlying native assets? Now, I'm not saying that they're going to 100% has to be locked up. There's a formula that they have to have a certain amount of ratio backing these assets between those three, between the FLR, the stablecoins / ETH, and then the underlying. But if they use too much of that underlying asset, the challenger can submit a proof and then earn from that. So just like the liquidator, they're waiting there ready for that agent to do that. And agents will make mistakes and it will happen because volatility happens. Why is it the reason that we want them to hold some of the underlying asset? Because a lot of people ask, well, what happens if the price of XRP shoots up after I minted my FXRP? Well, they're holding the underlying asset, hence the delta hedged position. So there's no risk. They're in a position where if the price of XRP goes up or down, it doesn't matter to the agent because they're delta hedged on either side. And that's the point of this challenger, is to keep them in check. So a certain amount of that underlying asset has to be available for the amount that they have minted.
How have you experienced regulatory constraints recently, and what are your plans for navigating it in the near future?
I mean, we're looking to be compliant under, the European rules, and also considering being registered under VARA in Dubai. The regulator here is famed for being, sensible and well considered in their approach. I think that's why there's so many people here. The US and Europe, I'm quite pleased that they did actually put in place what looks to be a sensible regime. We'll see how it gets executed. The US, of course, is a basket case when it comes to crypto, and doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon, for obvious reasons. I mean, it's a threat to them.
3. This is unprecedented times of change and disruption taking place within the community. To truly understand what is going on, you're going to have to expand your horizons and look beyond 2018 and 2019, because things already have changed. Now they're just rapidly advancing. There's so much development happening. We're moving from being fans to being investors to being participants to being ultimately citizens on these networks and these communities, to bring value and utility to these networks, but also for us to capitalize on the opportunity. The table is being set for explosive growth, explosive adoption interoperability from groundbreaking new technologies and financial products, as well as liquidity services that were unimaginable just a few years ago.